Hello guys, welcome back to Audible Odyssey. So let's step into a world of immersive storytelling where gripping tales of mystery, horror and adventure come to life. Each narration is crafted to pull you into the heart of the story, creating an unforgettable audio experience. From spine-tingling horrors to timeless classics, Audible Odyssey Adventures is your gateway to thrilling journeys beyond imagination. Subscribe now, and let the stories take you to places you've never dreamed of. Audible Odyssey Presents. I've told this story only a few times in my life, mainly because of the fact that no one would believe it. I mean, I barely believe it, and it's happened to me. Sometimes I wonder if I was just hallucinating or imagining things, but 6 years is a long time to imagine things or hallucinate. I just wonder sometimes that I maybe made it all up. If it wasn't for the fact my family noticed it as well, would have ignored it as my imagination. But I digress. This is my story of the thing in our basement and how it affected my family and altered my life forever. This entire story starts in 2002. A few months later, we moved to our old family farm. My uncle had died and had left my mom the farm. We moved over 2 provinces to make it there for the funeral and to move into the house. It's an old house built in the 20s. It's close to 100 years old. It has a history and will probably outlive most of us anyway. As I was saying, it started around springtime in 2002. We started feeling things in the basement, an intense hatred, almost like something was staring at us who hated our guts. The feeling started to fill the basement. As soon as you set foot at the top of the stairs. I was only 11 at the time, and all I knew was that I hated going down there, but being curious, I'd play this game. It involved me standing on the top downstairs and slowly moving down them. I'd stay about 30 seconds on each downstairs before moving one down. I'd keep doing this until the feeling got so bad that my throat went dry. I broke out into a cold sweat and my heart started beating frantically from the fear that the anger, hatred and malice inspired. Once I couldn't stand it. I'd bolt back upstairs and hide in my room until the feelings would disappear. For nearly a year. It would be like that, but I never noticed that during that year the number of steps I could take down in my little game decreased from 8 to only 3. In the fall of 2003, I had to get a loaf of bread from the freezer downstairs. Usually I avoided such tasks because I hated how the basement made me feel, but I figured I'd do it quickly and have it done and over with. I stood at the top of the stairs. A knot of fear forming in my stomach. I was apprehensive, and so I started walking down when I tripped on the 3rd step from the top and tumbled the rest of the way down. I lay dazed on the floor. My head had cracked against a concrete wall at the bottom of the stairs. My mom had to come down and help me back up, but I remember lying there and thinking I saw something underneath the stairs, a dark figure with narrowed yellow eyes, but I thought nothing of it. I'd hit my head pretty hard and had a concussion, yet I couldn't stop the feeling in my right foot. It felt like someone had grabbed it right before I tripped and fell. A large hand holding down the top of my foot made me fall. I stopped going down there. After that, I'd find ways to get out of it if I had to pass off as I was too busy or I had to do something else. It wasn't until a while later that I saw that I had a pretty deep cut on my foot. I figured I'd gotten it when I tumbled down the stairs, but I knew down in my stomach that it had come. Milliseconds before I'd fell. I still have the scar reminding me of what had happened. The thing down there really started to scare me because in February 2004 I felt like it was talking to me, not really talking but whispering things to me as I passed the gaping doorway that led down there. The basement opening sat right between the living room and the kitchen, so I had to pass it constantly. If I stayed near it for too long, the whispering would get loud enough that I could hear some of what was being said, usually nonsense words, leave, hate, no things like that, but if I even stepped on the very top step, I could hear a voice whispering humorously for me to come down, for me to take another step. I'd start seeing things the longer I stood there. A dark shadow right next to the stairs, a flash of glowing yellow eyes and black shadows reaching between the steps on the stairs. I'd bolt, and I swear I could hear the thing chuckling as I ran away. I was terrified because I started feeling the thing on the main floor of the house. It was like hundreds of eyes watching you with such malice and hatred that you wanted to be sick. Around June, the thing found its way into my bedroom. I was sleeping on the main floor in what used to be the porch when I woke up to the feeling of something staring at me with great hatred and malice. I opened my eyes and it was there in the darkest corner of my room. The fear paralyzed me and I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. The thing didn't move. It just stared at me with the glowing eyes. I didn't know when it left or how long it stayed. But I just remember being cold with fear, and when it was gone, I remember feeling utterly sick to my stomach. I shook violently for close to an hour afterwards and I was in a cold sweat. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I just sat in my bed staring at the dark corner that now just looked like a corner for the rest of the night. It wasn't until the sun rose and the light removed the shadows from the corner that I found the strength to move from that spot. It happens infrequently, the thing going into my room and staring at me. It was never regular. It was as if the thing wanted to keep me off balance, and I was terrified of falling asleep, always wondering if this was the night the thing would come to my room to wake me up, with a terrible fear crawling through my body. Being 13, I couldn't talk about it. I wanted to figure it out on my own, but my mom knew something was going on. She told me that she knew about the thing in the basement, that she felt it down there. Every time she went there, the malice and hatred were all aimed at her. She told me it scared her, too. I remember thinking that she didn't know about it, she didn't have it coming into her room, she didn't have it watching her all the time. I was so scared I was ready to cry at the slightest provocation. My siblings felt it too, but they ignored it, calling the house creepy and old. No one felt the thing like I did. Then a few months later, the thing did something I didn't think it was capable of. The constant fear had settled onto my skin like a tight and dark blanket. It dragged me down and my school marks had fallen into the low 60s and I couldn't shake it off no matter how hard I tried. I wasn't sleeping properly and the thing still came into my bedroom to wake me up and terrify me for a few minutes or an hour. I never knew the exact time the thing stayed. All I knew was that it was just there. On this particular occasion, I'd fallen into an exhausted sleep, going nearly 2 weeks without having the thing come into my bedroom. At night, I woke up to something pinning me to the bed. I was terrified to open my eyes, terrified of what was there. It was like I no longer had control of my body, and I opened my eyes despite trying to clench them shut. The thing was there, its bright yellow eyes staring into my own, and its mouth was open as if inhaling something. I screamed, but it felt like something had stolen the noise, as if the thing had inhaled it, stolen it, and eaten it. Its expression was that of anger, but it was as though it was enjoying it. Its face reminded me of that of an angry wild cat. The face was pulled back in a sonar. It laughed low in its throat and I fought to get it off, me time. I stood still as its face got closer and closer to mine. I could feel its hands clutch my upper arms tightly, and I remember feeling the heat from them burn my skin. I wanted to cry and scream, but all sounds I made were silenced as they left my mouth. The thing chuckled more. I felt my heart feel like it was going to burst from my chest. It pounded so hard I felt like I wanted to throw up. I felt so terrified because I thought I was going to die. Just before the thing's mouth reached my face, my mom opened my bedroom door and the light chased the thing away. I immediately started sobbing and told my mom that the thing was trying to get me. She let me lie on the couch and felt my forehead. I had a high fever and she believed me to be delicious, but I now know it was the thing that caused the fever, how hot its hands had been on my skin, how the heat burned through my body and scared me more than its face ever could. It was just after that incident that I discovered a change in my behavior. I felt angry all the time, not just angry but filled with rage. I'd shout and scream at the slightest things, dark and brooding. My mom told me it was like she didn't know me at times, like I'd changed overnight. I scared myself during this time. I couldn't control my anger, I couldn't control my actions. The thing retreated to the basement and I couldn't understand what was going on, but I felt more comfortable around the basement, like I was home when down there. It was only after a few weeks that I realized the thing had accomplished what it tried to do. It had planted the seeds of hate, malice and anger within me. It terrified me more than anything, because not only did those seeds grow, but I was losing more and more of myself when they did, and I had no way to get myself back. I was slowly becoming like the thing in the basement, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. It was around the peak of bad behavior that I met an unusual person. Well, not so much a person, but a thing like the one in the basement. But it was like the yang to the thing in the basement's yang, whereas the thing in the basement was evil, angry, and terrifying. This other thing was the complete opposite of a ghost, a guardian angel. I had no clue. All I know is that when I met him I was free of fear, anger, hate, and malice for the first time in nearly 2 years. It was such a relief to be free from such negative feelings for the first time in so long. It felt so wonderful that I wanted to cry. I knew it was a male because when I saw him he was a few years older than me but still young. I was 13 and I first met him on the family farm. I remember feeling like I knew him, that he'd been looking after me for a while, but I'd never met him before in my life. It was that familiarity that made it so I wasn't at all concerned for my safety as I asked him his name and if he'd like to come into the house for a drink of water. Let me elaborate a bit here. I'm getting ahead of myself and my thoughts are scattered everywhere. It was June 2005 and I was wandering around the large span of trees behind the house when I looked through a break in the trees and saw him being as curious as I was. I walked through the trees until I broke through and stood on the edge of the clearing. His back was to me and after a few seconds of silence I called out a greeting. He turned around and waved. He had such a beautiful smile and was dressed in clothes century riding gear, but he was wearing a loose, fitting white shirt. I didn't think anything of it. Many ideas of why he was dressed like that crossed my mind, but all I could think of was the fact he must have been so warm. It was a very hot day, one where you felt like you were melting if you sit down on the couch or stand still for any period of time. We stared at each other for a few minutes. The smile never left his face and I finally realized that I felt no fear or anger. Being as calm as I was and relieved as I felt, I asked him his name. The answer made me a tad weary, not of the fact his name was William but how the answer was received. It was like it surrounded me as if he was far away and a gust of wind carried the name over a great distance like an echo of an echo. He continued to smile and I had to smile back. I asked him if he'd like to come in for a drink of water and to cool down. He nodded and when I turned to the house I felt him take my hand. I looked over and no one was there, but after all I'd been through so far, I could no longer have the urge to care. I walked with his hand in mine all the way to the house, but as soon as I opened the door I knew I'd pissed off the thing in the basement big time. I could feel him everywhere just waiting on the porch and I stood in the open doorway to the house, for a long time, not wanting to step into that, not wanting to subjugate myself to that form of mental torture. I wanted to cry because the peace that the figure William had given me only a few minutes ago was completely gone. I was terrified once again. I forced myself to take that first step into the house and I wasn't assaulted by the feelings as I had grown accustomed to. But I could feel another presence with me. As I walked through the house, I could feel it putting itself between me and the thing in the basement. That night I spent it sleeping like I never had before. I could feel William in my room. At that time, I'd moved upstairs to sleep in the porch bedroom, no longer feeling safe staying inside. I remember waking up in the middle of the night to see William again sitting in a chair staring at the door as if waiting for the thing in the basement to try anything while I slept. I fell asleep after he looked over and nodded as if to say I could sleep without fear. I woke up feeling so refreshed and happy I actually surprised my mom. She gave me a hug and told me that she missed me. I knew what she'd meant. It was the first time that I had full control over my emotions and my actions, and I reveled in it. Weeks went by and the thing in the basement was stuck where started the basement. Those weeks turned into months, and it wasn't until the last remnants of the summer of 2006 passed that the thing in the basement came back out, not for me but for my Harold niece. She started having nightmares. She didn't want to sleep in her crib. William, who hadn't left my side since the day I met him, left me to stay with my niece. I knew this because I found myself feeling like I had before. He came angry and terrified. The thing in the basement switched targets again. I didn't know why it targeted me like it did, and I didn't know why it affected me like it did, but then again I didn't know then what I know now. For a month I felt like that. Then I felt William around me once again, staying in my room, putting himself between me and the thing in the basement. Shortly after, my niece started having nightmares and refusing to sleep in her crib again. We were in a battle, and the thing in the basement knew he'd caught William between two things. It was me or my niece. He was going to have one of us, and there was nothing that William could do to stop it. I knew that at the time. I knew it was me or my niece, and I made up my mind it would be me. I refused to allow my niece to be taken in by that thing like I had. It was during this time that my sister called one of her friends, a shaman, who told her he could feel the thing and that either we had to leave or it did. My sister tried to do a simple cleansing, but the thing in the basement just shook it off. It was close to a year before she had enough help to do a complete cleansing. I was at school when she and my mom did it. I came home to a different house. The thing in the basement was gone, not destroyed but banished from our house with him. The cleansing banished William as well. I felt bereft without him. The house felt empty, but a good empty, just humans in the house. Nothing else lingered. It was a peace I had never believed in supernatural before the incident. I'm an agnostic atheist, so I shouldn't believe in this stuff, but having lived it, I just can't deny it. I did some research afterwards and I discovered that I'm an HASP, a highly sensitive person, also known as an introvert. I'm able to perceive things that others cannot. This is why the thing in the basement affected me so much. I'm still scared, though not that the thing in the basement might come back, but for the fact that we banished him from our house. It's of the fact that it's still out there. It's not gone. We didn't kill it. This thing is still out there preying at people like me, hiding in the dark, waiting for the perfect time to strike, the perfect time to plant its seeds of hate, anger, and malice to create more things like himself. I'm one of the lucky ones, one that escaped its angry gaze. Others might not be so lucky, but if it exists, others may as well. More creatures, more things out there preying on the unsuspecting, hiding in the dark shadows of bedrooms, closets, and basements. I don't know if you can destroy them or even fight them. All I know is that you have no defense against them. You can't fight them. You can only resist, but once they get their claws, seeds, fangs into you, there's nothing you can do unless you find your own William. It's impossible to truly rid yourself of them. We banished the thing to the basement and kicked him out the door, but one must remember doors open both ways, and we forgot to lock ours. That much I know because we accidentally let some other things in. So guys, the video has ended now. If you like our stories and want to see more videos like this, please subscribe to Audible Odyssey channel and do all these things, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Enjoy horror and adventure stories like this. So just subscribe to Audible Odyssey. Bye bye.